Itzel Osorio, and I will present the article What the Good Digital Language Learner Can Teach Us by Anna Turula. This study sheds light on the characteristics of what makes a good language learner good in the context of the digital era. Uh, the study starts by describing that a good learner is someone who can be successful in having a high language proficiency. This study took place between the months of October and December of 2014 among 106 first-year students of the English Studies program at the Pedagogical University in Krakow, Poland. And the study used surveys to find out online language learning routines and conducted interviews with 16 random students out of the 106 to follow up on the results from the surveys. In the introduction, the author mentioned that learning through modeling is a technique involving observations to learn from those who can or know how to learn in the first place. And it basically consists of observing, noting, and then reproducing details and behaviors that we perceive as desirable or good from those who have a higher proficiency level, who have better grades. So we reproduce those behaviors. Many studies agree on the fact that to be a good language learner, predisposition is not as important as having good strategies. And the author mentioned that these strategies now include mastery of digital language learning. The article also mentioned that previous research has created a model of what a good language learner is and what a good language learner does. And the study aims to discover if those students who are proficient in English follow and adhere to that model. For the background of the study, first the author mentions the characteristics of a good language learner according to the studies by Rubin and Stern. So they mention that a good language learner is someone who is an active learner, who makes intelligent guesses about the language, meaning that if they are having a conversation, if they are reading something and they are not able to comprehend a small part, then they can make guesses based on the context so that they are able to carry on with the conversation, with the rest of the reading, with the listening. They are also tolerant. A good language learner experiments with language and with communication, and it's also willing to practice without feeling inhibited. So they experiment no matter what. They don't feel like this shyness, because at the end of the day, it means that they are learning even if they make mistakes. Also, a good language learner pays attention to the meaning and form not only of his own speech or his own production, but also from what other people say. So they are always looking and focusing on these clues, like context clues and vocabulary expressions that they don't know, so that they can reproduce them. And also, they pay attention to their own speech so they can correct it and be aware of the structures that they're using. And finally, a good language learner develops an understanding of the language as a system. In the digital era, a good language learner is more confident, tolerant, and open-minded. This is because, given the constant interaction thanks to the internet and social media, uh, good digital learners are more community oriented. So they develop a good production and communication skills because they are able to build a sense of community. They develop their communicative competence by participating in, for example, forums or discussions. A good digital language learner can also deal with vast amounts of information, resources, genres, and registers. They can apply meta-comprehension skills to understand semantic relations and differences between key and distracting information. So this is related to dealing with amounts of information. They can notice the difference between what's important and what is not important. They organize the information that they receive and they can plan their own routines. Now, for the study itself on what a good digital learner can teach us, we have that the aim of the study was to identify selected strategies of good digital language learners, like how they handle the lack of a community and the lack of a teacher, the loads of information that they receive, and the different types of resources. And the context, as mentioned before, was autumn of 2014, and they used 8 groups of millennial, potentially good first year students of the English Studies program at Pedagogical University of Krakow in Poland. And of the 106 people, 78 were females and 18 were males. The article mentioned that this was the normal distribution for a group of the English Studies program. For the results, the first part of the study was a survey, and the point of the survey was to understand the learning routines of the students by asking them if the use of the internet helped them to reach their level of proficiency, which activities they thought to be more beneficial for them, and how could they use online resources in class, like how could they implement the activities that they use into the classroom. And the results of the survey showed that the students used online resources mostly to practice receptive skills, because practicing productive skills is not as common. This was because the most common or like basic, in a way, form of communication online is through chats. So practicing, for example, speaking, it's much harder than practicing listening and reading. Now, for the second part of the study, they use interviews. So of the original population, they chose 16 random students. And the interviews helped them to understand the routines that were reported, as well as other aspects like the exposure to digital input in English, meaning what they consume and how they consume it, regarding the content that they interact with online. And the interviews also help to know the level of meta language known by the students, especially if potentially good students were proficient in using different types of digital strategies, which was a very important part of being a good digital language learner, not only a good language learner. And we will talk about that. For the discussion and conclusion of the results and the study, the author first mentioned that potentially good learners are active, so they search for opportunities to practice and are capable of using strategies that allow them to understand the language, even if they don't have a teacher guiding them. So, because they are very community oriented and they are able to browse online to find resources, they can overcome the fact that they don't have a teacher present at all time. But although we could infer that these potentially good autonomous language learners are good learners, the article mentions that it's very important to analyze the quality of these autonomous learnings, because the study showed that there are some students that don't have yet the communicative skills needed to be good learners. Also, and this was related to being a good digital language learner, was that the study showed that the majority of the students who are proficient in the language can use technology, but they are not tech savvy, meaning that they only know how to use basic online resources and basic tools. So they don't know how to exploit their full potential of the resources that they have. And finally, um, the study mentioned that the group of learners that the author studied could be described as the good digital language learners, even though they still needed some guidance in giving like structure to language education using different types of strategies, because they are lacking digital strategies most of all. And also, it mentioned that the knowledge that students can get from informal language use, it's not enough. So English learners do need exposure to a variety of discourses, not only what they see on their everyday scrolling through different apps or different forums. For my personal thoughts and opinions, I really like the article. I think it's very important, especially the part of being um, more critical of autonomous learning, because I feel that sometimes we believe that because we use certain apps or we have certain strategies or we know how to use some programs, that we automatically become good language learners, and that is not true. um, Especially given that sometimes, the vast majority of times, the language used online, it's very informal. Even having uh, special apps or special programs, the language that we encounter, it is not enough. I completely agree with that. So I think that we can use like a lot of these resources, but at the end of the day, we do need a teacher or a guide, because even if we have a community, we still need someone who can tell us, hey, this is correct, this is not correct, who can give us more strategies and even more resources, because we can believe that we are studying with the best of the best, but then the teacher could show us better resources to practice. For example, with videos that we may not know, or we are reading these books but they are not as good or they don't have enough vocabulary. So yeah, I think that was really interesting, and overall I really like the article. I agree with a lot of the points, and I think it will be very interesting to see more of a good digital language learner.